Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for a review of the 10th studio album by the emo and alternative rock band Jimmy Eat World. This new one is called Surviving. And also, quick comment question for you. Would you like to see a top 10 or ranked on Jimmy Eat World in the future? If so, then please like this video and also show me support in the comment section down below. Give me some encouragement. 10 albums into their career, Jimmy Eat World find themselves sort of bridging the gap in between their past selves, their early releases, and also an inconsistent decade. The 2010s, if I'm being quite honest, haven't been my favorite when it comes to Jimmy Eat World albums. I felt like some of the records like Invented might have sounded really good to my ears at the time, but also in retrospect, I have not come back to them a ton. Now, their last album that released in 2016, Integrity Blues, was a different story. I feel that that was a very fully fleshed out and also emotive listen. It saw them experimenting a bit with their sound. It's a very moody album, but also it was slept on by a lot of the fans. It deserved a lot better. I feel that they made things come full circle here on Surviving, and I'm so happy to see them not only surviving, but thriving. The first single was actually something that really caught my ears. It was kind of a double single because we had already heard Love Never. I think this is a re-recorded version, and obviously that was number 40 on my best songs of last year, so you know I'm a fan of that. A great track with just so much positivity, but also moving past all of this bullshit type feeling. Great guitars, a great presence overall from the entire band. But All the Way Stay, the other single that we got, was another one that felt like it was kind of taking a play right out of the 80s book, and it's not a bad move at all. It works for them, and then that unexpected sax solo, yeah, it sold me on having to check out this LP and put it at the top of my radar. This is Jimmy Eat World. They've never exactly been the grittiest or most raw band on the planet, but also they had been experimenting with more moody sounds this side of, say, Chase This Light in 2008, 2009. I feel that this new record here does have a brightness to it, something that is kind of magnetic in the way that it shines. There's plenty of power pop melodies, which they've definitely had so many times in the past. That's what's obviously drawn so many people to their music, that combining in alternative rock and then emo tendencies in the lyrics. And that's certainly still here, but there's always a twinkle in the eye, it feels, with Jim Adkins' writing style. That pops up once again on some of these tracks as he just kind of swerves through life in the sober lane, getting back to his old self and finding a way to carve out a routine that not only keeps him sober, but also just kind of keeps him taking life not too seriously. Consider this a return to the bright guitar-heavy melodies of their early albums, but also there's plenty of payoffs that just feel triumphant and huge, things that you just want to pat them on the back and say, keep going for. Justin Meldal Johnson once again produced this, and I'm glad that they stuck with him after he produced Integrity Blues. He's honestly becoming one of my favorite producers, mainly because he's worked on so many projects that I just simply love. The songwriting is once again a major key on Surviving. Somehow, after all of these decades, Jim Adkins still has so much potency in his pens. He writes things that you can actually relate to and feel, and yes, they're familiar messages, but somehow they don't feel cheesy. There's a tight-knit musicianship as a band. Clearly, there is a bond, because this isn't one of those groups that has tons of lineup changes or anything like that. They stay true to themselves. They write music that not only feels familiar to them, but stuff that sometimes pushes boundaries. And yes, this album is more of a return to familiarity for a lot of fans. I think some people who have not been on board this decade are going to love and adore this album. But also, there are some things that just feel upgraded in some senses. The drumming on this record is a big standout. Cuts like 1 mil, and even the closing track, Congratulations, throw in some things that almost remind me of AFI, which makes sense because Davey Havok has guest vocals on that closing track. If I had to make one complaint about the musicianship on this record though, it's just that the bass doesn't pop as much as I would want it to in the mix on a few of the cuts. I mean, some of them, they're so solid. Recommit Recommit is one of those. But it's just a bigger disappointment because Justin Meldale Johnson is producing this album, and he's a bassist himself, and for the bass to get overlooked and just eaten up by the guitars in the mix at times, it's not doing itself any favors. Also, I can't help but point out the black sheep on the album. That would be 555 or 555, track number 4, ironically. It's a song that feels like it would be more akin to Integrity Blues, the last record, which you guys know, I did love that, but it feels out of place here. It just sticks out because it's much more electronic. It was built around a loop. There's some washed out synths here. It feels more atmospheric. And I loved tracks like Pretty Grids on the last album, one of my favorite Jimmy Eat World songs, in fact. But this song doesn't really fit in on the album at all. Why not start off by talking about not only the opening track, but also the title track, Surviving. This is one of the most defiant songs that I've heard all year. It just feels fresh, yet it's so simple with the way that it works in that riff. It automatically hooks you, and then they start adding a little bit more fancy work as they overlay guitars on top of that steady rhythm. Also the drum groove, the vocals, everything just lifts you up. Again, it puts you in the best mood. I have a bright smile on my face when I listen to this song. 1 Mil is a cheeky little tune that seems to chat about love in the screen time era. I think there's killer drums on this track, plus even though the lyrics are a bit more clunky here, they managed to nail down the energy to the point where it really doesn't matter all that much. I also really like Diamond. It's turning into one of my favorite songs on Surviving. This is a song that feels like it's an ode to just putting the expectations of others down the well, saying goodbye to that, because I'm never going to be able to live up to that, even though it is a message that we've heard time and time again. The bright instrumentation here, the really catchy chorus that drills it into your skull, and the strong songwriting makes this actually stand out. Criminal Energy is a slam dunk that is fueled by dominating guitars and awesome drum rhythms. I feel that the spark is so apparent in Jim Atkins's voice on this one, as he really sells you on the overall tone and pacing of the song. It feels urgent, and it's just something that takes me back to the glory days of Jimmy Eat World. I could say similar things about Recommit that does take on a darker edge to it. I think that's something they were trying to do on 555, but this song does it so much better in a very different way that feels more akin to the rest of the record. Surviving is an album that I have to recommend to really any Jimmy Eat World or alternative rock fan. There's the power pop, there's the emo, there's the alternative, there's a little bit of everything on this record, and the last album was more moody. This one feels just very cathartic. So overall for me, I'm giving this record a 4, and I would love to know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Don't forget to drop a like on this review, and if you're interested in seeing the top 10 or ranked on Jimmy Eat World in 2020, then let me know in the comments section. Other than that, you can check out my review of Integrity Blues right here, another recent rock review over here. All of my social media accounts, including my Patreon, can be found in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.